Hi, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel, CEO of Techstrong, and welcome to another live roundtable of DevOps Unbound. For those of you who aren't familiar, maybe this is your first DevOps Unbound. DevOps Unbound is a bi-weekly video show. I always forget if it's bi-weekly or semi-weekly, but whatever. It's every other week. And we cover interesting topics in DevOps. We've been doing this for over 2 years now. And we really great show. If you get a chance, techstrong.tv, you can watch old episodes of it, and there's plenty of them. And we cover a lot of great topics. About every month or month and a half, though, we do what we call a live roundtable version of DevOps Unbound, where we have not only our panel guests, which we'll have on show to show, but we also have our audience participating. And so to our audience who are out there, thank you, welcome, please join in. How do you join in? If you're watching this in your browser, as most of us are, we use our big marker broadcasting platform, you have a communication window on your right-hand corner. And for most of you, the default is the chat window, and you'll see under chat, public, and presenters, private. You could use that public chat. Our panel members will see that. Of course, everyone else will too. So this is not a private chat. Don't put anything up there that you wouldn't want everyone who's attending this event to see. There are private ways of private chatting people, but again, I don't recommend it. Some people find that a little too invasive. If you have a question specifically for the panel, though, that we'd like to bring out, at that panel level, next to the word chat, you'll see, for most of you, it's grayed out, Q&A. If you go to Q&A, you can type in a question there, and we will bring that right up to the panel. If you put it in the regular public chat, one of our panel members may just answer you within the chat. We may bring it up to the whole panel. It could also be that another attendee answers you as well. And it's great to have, that's our hallway track right there in the public chat. So feel free to use it. We are giving away 4 Amazon gift cards at the end today, so stick around for that if that's something you're interested in, to people attending. I always like to ask people, though, just to get started, hey, say hello in our chat window. Let us know where you're from. It's always interesting to see what a worldwide audience we have here. I see San Antonio. I see Montenegro. It's fantastic. Nigeria, Delta State, some others. So, don't be shy. Let us know where you are. Istanbul, England, New York. I'm a New Yorker, if you couldn't tell. Anyway, so thank you for joining. That's how you interact. Let me introduce you to this month's crazy good panel. First, I want to introduce you from Akamai Technologies. She's actually a repeat guest on our DevOps Unbound. She's been nice enough to come back twice, so we must have done something right. Let me introduce you to Talia Nasi. Talia, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Talia. I'm a lead developer advocate for Akamai. I was a test engineer at WeWork, at Visa, at Forbes, and I did that for a few years before becoming a developer advocate. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to have you back, Talia. Thank you for coming back. Next up, we have he's a first-timer on our DevOps Unbound event, and his name is Andrew Aylshire. Andrew, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Andrew Aylshire. I've been a software test engineer for 24 years now. Been working for such companies like Disney, Nintendo, Microsoft, AT&T, and such. Doing mostly manual testing, but also as a test lead and advocate for testing around.
24 years as a tester. Thank you for your service, Andrew. I mean, that's fantastic, man. Good for you. And then our third panel member, she's also a first-time panelist, but I think she's going to really bring a lot to it. I'd like you to introduce you to Lisette Zunon. If I mispronounced it, I apologize, Lisette. from Fort Robotics. Why don't we start with your name so we get that right?
No, you got it perfectly. I'm Lizette
Okay.
Zuno. I'm checking in from Dallas, Texas. I have about 20-year experience in quality engineering, work for companies such as Apple Computer, Nortel, that no longer existed, Yahoo, American Heart Association, and many startup, about small startup where I was consulting mostly from my own boutique. And then recently, almost a year now, working at Fort Robotic. I lead a QA organization. I've built a multiple QA organization from the ground up for most of this company. So I'm excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. And you know what? I remember Nortel. We bought a lot of Nortel equipment back in the day. Mitchell did too, I'm sure, but we'll talk about it. Thanks for being here. So I already mentioned Mitchell. Mitchell is my co-host and compadre here on DevOps Unbound, as well as at Techstrong. But Mitchell, why don't you go ahead?
Well, hey, thanks, Alan. I'm CTO with Techstrong Group and also work as a principal and founder of our research group, Techstrong Research. My connection to testing has just really been throughout my whole career. I learned pretty early on that the quality of testing by developers varies greatly. Your mileage may vary. And test engineers, quality engineers have been both colleagues and also trusted sources, reliable on kind of where are we with software and what's happening, and to get a full complete picture. So I worked alongside with folks like that are on our panel, and really enjoy it. So it's a fantastic job, and I appreciate you. Thank you all for your service. To add to Alan.
Yep, thank you. We have some great people here with real testing backgrounds, and it's great because DevOps Unbound. You know what I forgot to mention, Mitchell. DevOps Unbound is sponsored by our good friends at Tricentis, who are leaders in worldwide leaders in continuous testing, and have really become the powerhouse within the testing space. And it happens to be that this roundtable is actually about testing. On DevOps Unbound, we explore, every time I move, I'm greening, I apologize. We explore many, many facets of DevOps, not just testing. But today, however, I think we're in for a good one. Today's episode is the Testing Diaries, Confessions of an Application Tester. And, we know how important testing is. I'm sure Andrew and Lizette would be the first to tell us, with over 20 years each here. But there's a I don't want to say a hidden world, but there is let's say a bit of an unspoken or unknown world beyond just testers know testers, but what developers know about tests. It's kind of, if you ever seen the meme, what my mom thinks I do, what my friends think I do, what my spouse thinks I do, what do I really do? Right? And there's kind of that kind of hidden life within testers. And we're gonna, some of it isn't all cherries. There's a lot of pits in the bowl too, I bet. We're going to explore that today in depth. Andrew, you sound like the senior person in terms of testing experience on our panel today. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to kind of kick off our conversation. For those of us out here who maybe aren't testers or new to testing, let's hear some of your confessions.
Yeah. So being a tester for this long, it's a wild ride. It's definitely a roller coaster. You have your ups and downs and your twists and turns. And it has been one of those things where it's been just a passion. I fell in love with being a software tester. I even went to school to learn development for a little while and was like, nah, that's not really the path for me. I enjoy being a software tester. This is the industry I want to stay in. And, there's definitely those conversations that we have, with development teams where a lot of times test is considered the bottleneck. And a lot of times if teams are doing a good job tracking or estimating their work, then you can kind of draw out a lot of the data to prove that testing's not really a bottleneck. But that including testing earlier in a process is one way to actually speed up the whole development flow. So I think that's one of those kind of common misconceptions about test, is that it causes things to take a lot more time, when in reality it takes a lot less time the higher quality testing and processes that you put in place.
Got it.
I also think like the roles are different. I think the roles are different in development and testing. Like you said, Andrew, like when you're a tester, your testers don't make developers' lives miserable. I think when you're a tester,
In
you're
spite of
looking
what you might have heard.
Exactly.
It was in
I think when you're a tester, you're looking at the application more holistically, like from an end-to-end perspective, whereas when you're a developer, maybe you're only developing a small part of a bigger picture. I think it's just a completely different mindset as a developer versus a tester.
I love everything that I'm reading in the chat, but for me, because of my background, I was a developer, right? So I started as a developer at Nortel implementing stuff, but I found quickly that I enjoy more of making sure that whatever I was producing has quality, and it was not really encouraged back then as a developer to really focus on the testing of whatever you were producing. So I made a shift into, because I felt like, testing, as Talia mentioned, give you a holistic understanding, right? And for me, I always tell my tester that I need you at some point to become an SME of the product, because if you test something so good, you become an SME. And I always talk about like QA or tester are like a change agent, because you are not only understanding the application in and out, back and forth, but you also can innovate. You can also pinpoint where not the bottleneck, but where the latest defect, or what are the weakest point of the application. So you kind of have that power over the application, understanding the whole application. And for me, I think that's a really sweet spot to be. Where this challenge is really, I think, and I'm glad that we have show like this that we're talking about tester, because usually tester are not people that really talk too much about what they do, right? Because they're always supporting a product. So we usually not outspoken. We don't really talk about the day to day. Like we don't give our confession like we're doing here in this show today. So I think that that's a good thing. And we have to continue doing that as a community of testers, so people really understand, our role and what value we bring to organization.
Absolutely. And Lizette, I'd like to dig in. We have a good question from the audience I want to bring up. But before I do, I want to dig in because, Lizette, you were kind of the salmon swimming upstream here. Usually we hear about testers becoming developers, testers becoming advocates, testers staying testers. We don't often hear developers who've transitioned to testers. And I'm wondering, Andrew, in your experience, in your years, have you seen that a lot? Is that a common path?
Yeah, I mean, I see. Sorry, I missed part of that question there. So I was reading the chat.
So is it common to see developers become testers?
I think so, but I think there's a number of reasons for that. I often think that, some developers will switch over and they'll start being like SDETs and whatnot. There is a strong learning curve. Like you have some developers that are really interested in making high quality products. They really want to invest in unit testing, and they want to, they're really great at testing their own code. And so there is that mind shift initially of going from development into test. It's one of the things, when we're hiring teams, a lot of times we'll have an SDET opening and we'll have a flood that, especially with the industry the way it is now, we get a flood of software engineer resumes and applicants coming in. And there really is that, testing individuals, interviewing individuals to see how well their tester knowledge is because of the different shift in mindset. But I definitely see that there is some, really strong developers out there that get that itch for making super quality or, extreme high quality products. And they definitely do come over. It's great when they do. They have a more intimate knowledge of the code a lot of times. And especially when they've got that drive, when they've been on development teams, maybe that didn't have so much quality injected in their processes. and they feel like, this is something I'm passionate about, something I really want to bring to the table, and they end up being just fantastic testers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's kind of like my the story of my life in a mini nutshell. But another part that I want to stress out is it gives you that empathy for developer, because the relationship between tester and developer can be, a not an easy, because I mean, just look at it from a human perspective. You telling somebody, an adult, a smart adult, that this piece of code that they have something wrong with it, right? So you really have to like walk that empathic line of like bringing uh a way for them to understand. So for me, and I think for most people that make that shift, because you understand how code work, you can actually, now we're talking about shift left, but that's what that's really about. It's for the tester ability to really understand how code work, so they can really quickly help the developer find root cause so that he can fix whatever that is. It's the issue. And I think that always allowed to create like a strong relationship between a QA and developer.
Yeah, Lizette, I totally agree with you. The relationship between a developer and a tester, like that's but besides the product person, I feel like that's like one of the most important relationships to have. And I also think like when you're talking to a developer as a tester, like I think in my experience, you can't just go to them with like bugs, it's also on the other side, like, good job on, this thing, I didn't find anything, or, everything that you coded, like match the requirements, like great job. Like I feel like the times where I only went to developers for like bugs and I only reported bugs, was one outcome, and the times where I was like involved in the entire process and really like giving feedback throughout the whole process, like that turned out to be much better, and that relationship ended up growing.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the
guys, I do have something from the QA that's been here a while, and I got to bring it up. And just for the record, I had the watch running how quick this topic was going to come up, because you can't walk more than 10 feet in tech today without running into it. So I believe it was at it says here, what is it, 11:11? So about 11 minutes in, which is probably right after I finished the opening. And that is the whole AI ML thing, right? Everybody's talking about iterative AI, AI ML, and I don't have the it's just participant 907 has asked, what effect is AI ML having on both app developers and testing processes? Are they evolving as a result of this AI ML? And if so, how?
Yeah, so
And I'll throw it to the panel. Go ahead.
yeah, I love to take that, because I think since 2006, I've been like on the community really trying to talk. Every time that I get that, AI was coming, that's what I've been doing. I have a talk called, "Are you ready for AI to take over your QA automation?" And we are here now, in spring 2023, and it's here. It has been coming, it has been here for over 15 years. For those of us that are like super interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the way that I see it is, I see it as a toolbox. You have a toolbox, because there's this question that folks always want to know. Do you need to how do you know do you need to know how to code? Do you need to know this language? Do you need to know this tool? Every time I'm on a panel, those questions always come, and my easy answer is, think of it as a toolbox, right? So you have a toolbox. There's various tools that it is. So AI is just another tools that you want to leverage, because it's gonna help you a couple of things. And we have tools out here that are already doing that. Visual testing is one of my favorite one that AI can help you do. Easy one is really maintenance. The maintenance of like making sure when your test fail, it self heal itself. Those are low hanging fruit that you can already take advantage of with some of the tools. There's a lot more advanced depending on your application. If you're in gaming, there's a lot of use case in gaming, but I think you have to think of it as a toolbox. It's not going to take your job away. it's not going to be that smart yet to take any of our job. It's still going to require all of us to participate, so that the AI can actually learn and be really super intelligent. So that's my quick 2-minute answer.
Yeah, what you just said
it.
was completely correct. It's definitely a tool that we can use, but I don't think it's going to replace, it can't replace, some of the things that you have to manually test, that AI can't be involved in. Think of things that are like super sensitive, like government testing or, banking information, like some things like AI just can't have access to. And it has to be done by a human, or it has to be done, in a sensitive manner. Like those things, AI isn't really an option. But for, visual testing, things like that, like you said, Lisette, in those cases, it's definitely a tool to have.
Yeah, I think another big thing there, I second what both of you have said. User experience is another big one that AI just can't quite nail, right? There's nothing like somebody sitting there and using a product, like a human using a product, to really get an idea of how the user experiences it, where the bottlenecks are. And you can use AI to maybe, determine where people stop using a product or where some of the pain points are, but they really can't give you that visual feedback in a lot of ways. So.
And another thing is that you have to realize that we tester, we live in the pre-production life, right? So everything that we're doing is really before the application go live, So where AI really, in my opinion, will perform better is when the application is already out there, because we are working on brand new things. So somebody put on the chat, participant 380, how do I leverage chat GPT to write test cases? That is the question that I'm asking my team, because I want everybody to be efficient. Efficiency is like golden for me, right? But if this is a novel thing that I'm working on, how am I going to ask, an AI that is just literally, as of, I think maybe the latest release is like a little bit updated, but the last release was just by 2021, of chat GPT. So he doesn't even have information about some of the tools that we're using today, like in 2023 yet. So you really have to like understand that as a tester, we are working on novel idea. We are working on brand new application that require our expertise to actually craft those test cases. Where you want to leverage is really once you go in production, all those observability might be area where we can leverage AI a lot more, because now it's out there in the hand of customer.
Yeah.
So I think okay, you go, Andrew.
I was going to say, participant 380 also asked a kind of a question that,
I was going to bring it up too.
How do I replace junior testers with AI? And that's an interesting question. I think that you can have junior testers or manual test engineers leverage AI to help write automated tests. But I don't think you're ever going to fully, like, you can reduce your workforce of junior testers using AI. But with AI in its current state, you still need people to actually test what the AI is giving you back. Like even with machine learning, you still need to test the results that you're getting out of your artificial intelligence tools. So there's no way to completely replace that, but you could reduce your workforce by leveraging AI in smart ways.
I think one of the important things about AI and testing is what lends itself to it is that AI needs data. It's whether it's machine either guided or unguided learning, it requires a lot of data to be able to make intelligent decisions or whatever it's doing that using AI. So there's kind of a new role of a data engineer in the test environment and the data that we have. Maybe it's exhaust today and it's kind of falling on the floor. Maybe it's not. It's being leveraged for metrics and other things. But I think that's an evolving role for either new people or existing folks as we cultivate that AI capability in our testing tools and environment, our AI ops platforms, things like that. So it's a journey. It's not a, we're at that destination, and I think, of course, it'll evolve greatly. But I think that's one of the exciting things. Part of it. We're not going to use generative AI to write all our tests. It's just not going to happen. Not today. Not for a long time.
I don't know. Not today. But I got to tell you something. I think the GPT-4 I think is after 2021 perhaps.
It's here.
And it's out. But I just did an interview before this with a fellow from an observability company, actually, Lizette. But he was telling me in ChatGPT 4, you can now put a natural language question into it, and they'll turn it into a QL query for you.
And it's still limited by the knowledge base. It's still limited by the knowledge base of what built that. So
it is.
Right.
And you know, Microsoft and OpenAI are saying, hey, if you're using this to generate any kind of code, test or otherwise, you've got to have, at this point in the game, you got to have it tested or looked at by human eyes, right? There's got to be a review because it's just not that good yet.
Yep.
Hey, you guys got 20 years in, you'll probably get another 20. Don't worry. But I'm telling you, the day is coming where it will be that good. And
you know, Alan, I've been waiting for this day for more than 20 years, actually.
We all.
So folks telling me that it's still coming. Yeah, I think we are at the precipice of it. But the part that I love to tell tester, and the reason why I've been remaining in testing all this time, is really the fact that, you know, as technology's boundary is being pushed, you know, tester also can push the boundary, right? Because we are right in the center of all the action. And I actually love the comment that let me see, I think it was either Mitch or somebody, you know, the diversity of testing. I love to talk about that because having, you know, just like I'm talking about the toolbox, right? It's also having the diversity of the team, the thought of the folks, because for me, when I build team and I build folks that are going to test an application, you know, I like to make sure that they look like the people that are going to use the application in the field, because those instant intuition that you have when you testing, it's never in the requirement, right? The requirement always give you just a map, but the tester have to innovate. They have to be creative in how they test. And that's where you really get the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think, Lizette, you hit on a couple of things, or you hit on one thing that's been really impactful for us is that, you know, you can't really trust secure or high classified intelligence information with, you know, some of these AI tools. You can't throw things that are unreleased or unannounced to the public in there necessarily because of the nature of security around AI. So I think that is one of the big things that they're going to have to work on in order for it to be more acceptable. And you know, I've worked in the video game industry and a couple other different industries, and video games is one of those interesting ones where I've done some experiments where I've asked ChatGPT, like, how would you test a game kind of like Skyrim, like an open world game where every single player is bringing their own unique style to the game? And it's not impressive with the information that it comes up with right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves over time and when it can get to that point. You know, when you're developing this open world game, you want it to be quality, and you would love, you know, you've got a test team of 30, so you might have maybe 18 or 20 unique perspectives, you know, on how to play through or play styles of going through that game. But you don't have the millions of users of unique play styles that you have. And so being able to leverage AI to come up with more of those test scenarios and more of those, you know, paths through the product to figure that stuff out is something I'm definitely looking for. It's great for like web testing or things that have a set file or a set menu and UI. And for those kind of things, it can come up with some really quick tests. And there's some tools out there that we leverage as a company that let us test a lot of that stuff way easier. But when you're making games, it's AI, I think, has still got a couple of years. It's evolved a lot. You know, we started talking about it initially, I think like 3 or 4 years ago is when it first started being talked about in the testing circles, at least at conferences that I was attending. And to see the leaps and bounds that it's made over the last 4 years is amazing. So I think we're maybe, I don't know, to random guess, maybe about 5 years out from it being super robust for some of these larger games and being able to be beneficial for test teams for that.
Excellent. Guys, I got to tell you, we've been doing these DevOps Unbound roundtables, what, a year or more, Mitchell, year and a half? Mm-hmm. I have never seen a better audience. I mean, some of the comments and questions, I just wish there's no like button. You know, Cody in the back end, we should ask Big Market, there's got to be like for some of these things because they're just great. One person in the audience said, "Hey, what's needed with this AI stuff right now are guardrails," and that I can't agree with more because otherwise it's a train running off the tracks, and we definitely need those guardrails, guys. I don't want to make this because this is the problem with this AI chat GPT. It sucks you down a hole, and it takes over. Let's come back to, hey, for a long time, I've been in tech 30 years. For a long time, testers were kind of, in my mind, the Rodney Dangerfield of the IT team. They got no respect, right? I think that's changed. I think DevOps and continuous testing and stuff like that has changed it a little bit. You don't hear developers calling testers junior developers or like it's a way station on the way to their final destination. You guys have been in this a long time. Did you ever feel like that, number one? And number two, has it really changed a lot?
I think it for sure has. Developers now are expected to write all sorts of tests themselves. A lot of the interviews that I've conducted and that I've been to, like as a tester and as a developer, like they'll ask you to write tests right then and there. So it's not just about writing the code anymore. It's about writing the tests as well, and that goes like to unit tests and integration tests. Like you're expected to know how to do all of it as a developer. And I think that takes the weight off of testers to be more of like that, like I said before, this end-to-end like holistic view. And so, we talked about this a little bit before about like how testers are not the gatekeepers and they're not like the one person where like if something goes wrong, like people turn around and they're like, okay, like why didn't the tester like find this? That shouldn't happen. And if it does, like something's wrong in your pipeline.
Yeah, for me, I like to talk about the total quality mindset, right? So tester, DevOps, product owner, VA, everybody need to have this total quality mindset. So, because there's this ratio, right? You might have 15 developer, you only have two QA. That's never going to be giving you a full coverage if it's just those two people that are responsible, right? So everybody needs to be responsible. I also love to use the analogy of, I love food, so I like to use the analogy of when you go to a restaurant and you have an experience. From the moment you enter the restaurant, from the greeter, the server, everybody that is talking to you in the restaurant is giving you a total experience, right? But the chef is the one in the kitchen that are actually making the food. But if they give you, even if the server give you a bad recommendation in the food that you're gonna eat, it's gonna ruin your experience. So everybody needs to be part of this experience, And I also think it's also from a tester perspective to show what do we do, because I think a lot of developers don't even know what tests look like. They don't even know why we test, how we test. And so I really strive for my team to show everything that we do, show transparency, so they also can learn, and also for develop QA to participate in developer activity such as code review, pair programming. So really try to have the team cross-pollinate around the whole SDLC. I keep using an acronym, so I'll stop. The whole software development life cycle, so that everybody know what each of us do, and it give us the better confidence around the work that we're doing around each other. I think that's, for me, throughout my experience, because you learn, right, from your first job to the next one that you're leading. You're like, okay, I think we need to do this better. And then I think that's what sustains the team, and provide less stress, because QA people are really stressed out. I saw earlier in the comment people were talking about burnout. We get burnout a lot because we put a lot on our head. We feel like, because I lead Q organizations, so I talk with people on one-on-one. There's this pressure of like, when there's a bug, it's because I miss it. But wait, it might just be a miss requirement. It might just be we never even talk about it. It might be a code miss, right? So taking the pressure off of a QA person and being transparent about our work has been a little bit helpful, I believe, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the excellent points there about burnout, I think, is burnout stems usually from passion, right? You have a passion for quality, you have a passion to develop high quality products for the end user or consumer. And, you know, the more that you feel that you want to bring that quality to the table and the less that you're able to, I think that is what results in a lot of burnout for a lot of people. Because if you're a tester, you've kind of gotten used to the monotony or how to change the monotony in your head so it's not monotonous. Um, and to touch back on an earlier point that you had both made, and I love those points, it's, you know, we have a thing that we used to have a phrase called garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you put garbage into a process, you're going to get garbage out of a process. And there's this a lot of talk of shift left mentality. And, you know, it was funny. I've actually been evangelizing this at my company lately where a lot of people are like, oh, we need to get quality involved sooner. We need to shift left, which means we'll put quality in more meetings. And I'm like, I'm in just as many meetings as the producers and the project owners and project managers. I don't have time to be in more meetings. What we need to do is establish quality gates. You know, here's a set of gates that, and your team, you know, the development team, what do you need in a work item ticket? What's the minimum amount of information that you need before you're going to start working on it? And empowering the developers to say, no, I'm not taking this workload into my, or this task into my workload. Like, you need to give me more information. You need to do this. And that is a way to shift left and involves that quality mindset across the entire organization, where you hear that common trope of quality is everybody's responsibility. And it's, you can say these things, you can say shift left, you can say quality is everybody's responsibility, but how do you actually action upon that and enforce that and make that part of the culture? And I think that empowering individuals and teams every step of the way to say, no, I'm not going to work on that. No, this needs higher quality is a way for quality teams to inject those values at an organization level. And so that's one of the big things that we've been doing. I've been, you know, working for about 6 years with the teams that I'm on right now. And it's finally getting to the point, you know, I have a rule where if I say something like where I do system analysis and I suggest a process change and I don't like the answer that I get from the team, I set a timer for 6 months and a reminder. And then 6 months later, I ask the same question, because often enough times the environment has changed and people have felt the same things that I've predicted were going to happen, that I can now leverage some of that information and those emotions to then get the answer that we're trying to drive teams for. And so it's been, you know, 6 years of these same conversations to drive people towards this quality shift left mindset.
I love that, Andrew. I just don't know if I have the patience for the for the 6 months. I do similar thing, but for me, I give it a 3 month because I don't have patience, and also because I work a lot in startup space and things are extremely fast. But this has been something that I've been practicing because we come in organization is we usually change agent, right? We know what we want to change, but people got to change together, you know. So I usually have this 3 month gate, and I agree with you that you have to make it clear to people what does quality mean to them, you know. So I do this conversation with product owner. What does quality mean for product owner, right? What does quality mean for a developer? What does quality mean for QA? What does quality mean for sales folks, you know? And when you break it down for each people, it makes sense because I've been doing this for 20 years, but it's only just been recently that I realized that it was necessary, you know, and it was just an aha moment for me, like, so they don't know what we mean by quality, you know. But I had to, like, because somebody in the community reach out to me and say, I know you love to talk about quality, but what does it mean for me as a product owner specifically? So then we dive into it, and I realized that, you know, everybody needs to know their piece of the pie, literally, you know, and then we put it together, and then it will make sense because we, as you say, you know, we go in front of our team, you know, all hand and say everybody needs the total quality, you know. But what does that mean for each people? You got to connect the dots for folks. So I think that's a really good point.
Basically, what both of you guys
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think what both of you are saying is at the core is like alignment on expectations. And what's worked well for me is right when you like start a new project or like there's a new feature or new improvement coming out, like get together with the product person who writes the requirements and then the developer or developers who are writing the code for it, and just go through all the requirements and say, okay, this is how we expect this to work, right? And like get everyone's agreement. And then when you open those bugs or, you know, things come up later with like defects or things that go wrong, everyone was aligned, and you can say like, okay, we agreed that this is how it's supposed to work and this is how it's working, you know, let's get on the same page because this is what we agreed on. So just like early alignment is what I'm hearing, and I totally agree.
Yeah, just real quick, somebody mentioned in chat that quality should not be a gatekeeper. And I hear that term a lot, and quality shouldn't necessarily be the gatekeeper, although we will be. But one way that quality can shift away from being the gatekeeper is to help build those gates and help other people feel empowered to enforce those gates.
Every time I hear that quality is a gatekeeper, I can make $1 million by now, because it is what it is.
Absolutely. But you know what? We all have our jobs to do. But I think one of the points out of this is, hey, it takes the whole business. It takes the village. It takes the business people, the developers, the architects, the QA folks, all being aligned to turn out something. But I got a great question. I'm going to assume, you know, this person might be a younger tester, but I think it applies to most of our testers out here. I don't mean younger, less experienced. How can I understand if I'm a good tester, right? If I'm the only tester in the project, there's no, you know, in other words, how do I test myself that I'm actually a good tester? Great question.
There's so many ways to answer this question. I can tell you what it's not better than I can tell you what it is. So it's not about how many test cases you write. It's not about how much code you write. It's not about how many defects you find. I think more importantly, it's about, one, making sure you understand making sure you understand what you're testing. So like become a subject matter expert on whatever it is that you're testing. And I think once you have that mindset of like, okay, I'm in charge of testing, you know, this specific product or this specific workflow, make sure you know every detail of that workflow. I would say know the product more than you know the code, because at the end of the day, you're testing like user experience and, you know, end to end, unless you're a back-end tester, in which case ignore everything I'm saying. But ideally, I would say start with making sure you understand all the details of your product and all the details of what you're testing. Like become the subject matter expert first, and then you can, you know, start writing all the different types of tests.
I think I plus one everything that Talia say. It's really about starting with, I love this thing about Dale Carnegie, starting with begin with the end in mind, right? So for me, the end is advocating for the customer, advocating for the product, because businesses are out here to make money. You know, these applications, even for nonprofit, you want to raise money. You know, I run nonprofit, so you also need to raise money sometimes. So that's also part of like, so you putting something out there so people can use it, right? And the best way is to advocate for those users. So every time you're in the room, being an SME is the best way to advocate, right? The other thing is just start small by asking questions. For me, asking questions, because I know the requirement is the requirement, right? And it's written by somebody, but I really think where the value is that the question that you're going to ask is going to unravel things that have not even been taught. And they can either tell you this is not in scope or this is in scope. So those are the two things that I really say, you know, I mean, everything that Talia says is right. Don't do this, don't do this. But I would say like customer advocacy and also asking question is golden. And I'm hoping Andrew will add some golden item to answer this lovely question.
It's
I have a
funny.
question. I have a question for the panel I'd like to ask. I'm just curious your perspective on things like DevOps, things like continuous testing, incremental releases, smaller releases. I know we probably none of us are at nirvana of doing that on a continual basis, but are those things that make releases smaller, pieces of work smaller, doing things kind of faster, but in more quantity. Is that making the testing world better, or is it making it harder for you in your role?
Better.
Definitely easier and better. I think when you have smaller chunks of code or smaller product updates, it's easier to write tests for a smaller improvement or a smaller feature that's being released, as opposed to, we have 12 different updates that are going into the release. I think definitely smaller incrementally. It's going to be, for me, I think it's better.
For me, I mean, before we were talking about all this, I always advocate for granular tests. Even if they give you like a 10-page requirement, your test case, you need to do the exercise of breaking that elephant into small bites. So now that the industry is understanding that, we have to even deliver small bite, of that elephant, it's just in alignment to how I think, testers should think. So I think that that's super helpful, definitely.
Yeah, for me, I once went to a conference, and one of the speakers was discussing how, at least with manual testing and a lot of automation as well, is you spend 80% of your time doing regression testing, which only finds about 20% of your bugs at most. That golden 80-20 rule. And I think with the constant, or the CI/CD pipeline, or constant integration, constant development pipeline, there's, when you're integrating with DevOps and stuff, there's a lot of those regression bugs, at least in my experience, happen when you're moving stuff from one environment to the next environment. Somebody forgets to copy some code over that has a bug fix or a defect fix in it. And then you're having to go through and retest all this stuff on 2 or 3 different environments, if you have a development and a staging or a pre-production environment. And so you spend so much time going through that. And when you get these solidified pipelines, you have this constant integration, you have unit testing that's running through, you don't have to spend 80% of your time to find 20% of your defects. In fact, we got rid of a lot of regression testing on the current project that I'm working on. We just don't do it because, if one of those things gets out, then we fix the processes so that we don't have those issues, instead of spending all the time just trying to find the issues to cover missed work. So.
Yeah, and just to add on top of that, another thing that has worked really well for me is like changing your team's definition of done. So like Andrew, in your case, I'm assuming you changed your team's definition of done to not include, those regression tests, or to include some other testing instead. So for me, it was, this feature is not done until these tests are written. And even though the code is written, even though product is signed off, even though it's like in production, or whatever your process is, if the tests aren't written, the feature is not done. Therefore, you can't close the Jira ticket yet, or you can't mark the task done in Asana, or whatever your tool is. Changing your definition of done, I feel like, makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I mean, I work in
guys. I got a Q&A. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
You go, Andrew.
I was going to say,
you go.
I work in an interesting industry, working in games, right? Or the product that I work on right now is a video game. And, to get around that, we create test collateral, which includes all of our test cases and all the different kind of tests that we run. And so one of the things that we do to cover regression is we do test sessions and test tours. More exploratory testing. We trust that the testers that we hire that are in the trenches, so to say, and working with the product on a day-to-day basis, if we tell them run through this feature as an end user, and we say spend 2 hours on it, that covers all of the new scenarios and a lot of the regression scenarios without having to necessarily run through a regression suite. So.
Absolutely. Guys, we have up in the QA section, I do like to bring those up if people put it in there. Person wants to know how to get into testing from a tech background. It's been a while, I know, for Lizette and Andrew and Talia as well, but what advice would you give this person?
I started out with a testing internship when I was in college. I actually worked for Jack in the Box, and I tested their POS, their point of sales, and it was like the best internship I ever had. And so I started off with, something like part-time, like this internship, and then it kind of like grew from there. I would say if you're already in tech and you want to get started in testing, I would go through like on, LinkedIn or Indeed and look at some of the job requirements for the roles that you're interested in and make sure that you have those. And put yourself in the mindset of a tester. Like if you're coming from development, think like, how would you test this? Because those are the types of questions you're going to be asked in interviews. Like, what types of tests? How would you test this? Put yourself like in that mindset. I don't think that it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's difficult to go from one role in tech to another, especially when I think tech is evolving so much right now that you can move from department to department.
So I actually teach QA classes. I was leading a QA course this month, just finished last week, for folks that are non-technical, into getting into QA, right? So if you're technical, so I would suggest do a class like that, a boot camp or something to get the fundamental. I disagree a little bit with Talia that, because I feel like we tend to minimize what it takes to be a good tester. You have to have like a knack for it. Not everybody, because that's what we do in company, and product owner think they can be a tester. That's not it. You have to have like some skill set. So if you're good at tech, yeah, that might be a good, 50% way into the field, but you still need to do some studying and understanding the mindset. Because you did mention the mindset, but the mindset is probably the difficult part for folks to grab, right? Because that's where they really trip themselves and they don't know, what QA does, what developer does. So I think trying to really understand what is the mindset is important. And then the third part for me is the tool, because whatever tool that you're going to use is probably going to be where you're going to live, right? And that's where you really want to excel. What is great about folks that have like an engineering background or like a computer science background is we are problem solvers. So if you come from any of those backgrounds, solving problem is already part of your DNA, so you can easily navigate. So when we say tech, I usually don't know what that means, right? So I don't like to make assumption. I know engineering as a hardcore engineering curriculum, but tech I'm not sure. So I usually say take like a boot camp course, like a month boot camp, trying to understand the fundamental of QA and automation, and then go for it. An internship is always a good start. That's usually the route that I usually give people that come ask me for career and coaching advice.
The only thing I could really add on top of that would be look for contract positions. We don't really have internships in the market in the Pacific Northwest, but we have lots of contract testing companies out there. Volt, Experis. There's a number. You can throw a freaking tennis ball and hit like 3 of them in the Pacific Northwest. So looking at those, getting in there, you can. I saw somebody mention in chat, can you not come off the street and get an entry level testing job? Sort of. But it's gotten a lot more complicated. There's a lot more people that found out that they want to be testers and they love the idea of doing it. So it's not just that easy anymore. Sometimes, you have to actually have what Lizette was talking about, Talia. You have to have this mindset. You have to be one step above everybody else that's going for that entry level position.
Absolutely. Guys,
I think it also matters.
Okay. I'm sorry, Talia.
Yeah, just on top of that, I think it also matters like when you're trying to be a software tester that you want to be a tester and not that you want to join the company as a tester and then become a developer for the company. Like that's something that I used to see a lot when I worked at a company that I won't say, but people would like think like, oh, it's easier to get a job at the company as a tester. And then I'm just going to, move to dev, to the development part. I would say don't do that. Like do what you actually want to do.
+1.
Agreed. Guys, I got to jump in here. Lizette unfortunately has a meeting at the top of the hour and she mentioned she might have to leave. So before you do, Lizette, I wanted to thank you from all of us for being such a dynamo on this panel. You really brought a lot to it. We'd love to have you back on some other panels as well. I also just want to, we've got panelists answering panelists' questions on here, which is, it does my heart good. That's what this thing was designed for, right? It's not just us answering questions or bringing it up. When we have audience interacting like that, we did our job. So thank you for those people who are answering questions of other folks in the audience. We got to start wrapping up here. Cody, if you want to give me the Amazon winners, we can, I guess, announce them. Oh, we got them here. Of course, I can't read them from here. Mitchell, can you see it on your screen? Because my screen's far away. You want to announce them?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Hold on just a second. I can't see it either. Where is it, Cody?
All right. It looks like it's under presenters in the chat section.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Got it here. It's Andre Jana, I think is how you say the first name.
Yep.
William Antiro and Anna B.
It looks like M. William, J. Antiro, and M. Anna B. So our team will reach out to you with that. I wish I could give everyone on here a $25 gift card, because what a great audience and great job, guys. Thank you. Yep. Talia and Andrew, Lizette had to drop, but guys, what a great job. Talia, thank dog. She behaved for the whole event, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Andrew, it's fantastic. Andrew, anytime you'd like to come on here and talk as the voice of Q, would love to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. We much appreciate it.
Thank you,
Talia. You're always welcome as well.
Thank you.
No, this was a great conversation. Mitch, you want to wrap things up?
Well, I'm just thinking, if you were coming to learn the insides, the confessions of a tester, I think you got it today. I don't know what I'm sure there's a lot more we could have talked about, but I don't know what else.
Yeah, Alan, that's the next webinar, Confessions of a Tester.
There we go. We'll jump into it even more.
All right.
So the response on that, I just want to say thanks to the audience, because it's really helped make this. And I hope non-testers are listening to this. Engineering managers, product managers, go give them the link to this recording and say, you need to listen to this. This will help you with how to lead your team and create your product. That's my takeaway.
Absolutely. Hey, I just want to close things out with saying thank you to Tricentis for their sponsorship of these. Couldn't do it without them. They bring so much to it. So thank you to all our friends at Tricentis. Check them out. We will see you on the next DevOps Unbound. It might not be live like this, but we do these, as I said, every month or so. So please join in. Until next time, though, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong and Mitchell Ashley, and this is DevOps Unbound by Tricentis. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.